Okay, let's call this September meeting of the Ridgway Planning Commission to order.
Okay, Commissioner Yilmazson. Commissioner Montague.
Yes.
Liz.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here.
And Chairperson Cameron.
Here. Okay, first item on the agenda is a public hearing. The application is a sketch plan, location town of Ridgway, block 30, lots 1 through 12, address to be determined Laura Street, zone historic residential HR, applicant David Bruce, owner Ridgway Homes LLC. CJ.
Hey, good evening, everybody. So yes, what we have first on the agenda is a sketch plan for Ridgway Homes. As mentioned, it is located east of and adjacent to Laura Street, south of Otto Street, and the property is described as lots 1 through 12, block 30. The lots are currently vacant with no existing structures or improvements on them. And also, which is somewhat unique to this property, is that there are no rights of way or roadway improvements on either the north, south, west, or the alley improvements to the east. So your property north of this subject property is zoned light industrial, and the remaining sides are zoned historic residential. The applicant is, so what we have in front of us tonight is a sketch plan, which is the first step in establishing a planned unit development on the property to allow for a variety of housing types and costs. And the applicant team is here this evening to give a presentation, so I won't get too much into what the details of the proposal from a design or product standpoint, but just kind of overall how it fits into the comp plan and the land use regulations. So the property is about, so they're going to be proposing to subdivide into 8 lots with a total of 14 units. That density on the property that is about just about 1 acre is just about 14 units per acre, so just over 14 units per acre. The property is identified as, I think it's mixed business. Wrong sheet. Sorry, town core, and this location in the comprehensive plan. And with a density of 6 to 12 units per acre. So the uses that are allowed pursuant to the comprehensive plan or the master plan is single family uses, dwelling duplex units, and similar multifamily residential uses. So those are all, those seem to fit the uses. And then in the staff report, we provide a list of policies that and goals that we feel should be considered while evaluating this application. The land use, as I mentioned, the land uses are consistent with the comprehensive plan of the future land use map. They're also consistent with the underlying zone district, which is a requirement of the PUD. The underlying zone district allows for single family duplexes and townhomes with 4 or fewer units by right. Additional multifamily units are allowed by conditional use. Furthermore, the applicant is requesting or proposing that a number of the units be affordable, and I think that they're going to be discussing a little bit more, but they're going to be hitting the area median income at 60% all the way through 120%, so a range of costs. Moving on to dimensional standards of the proposal, although we don't have all of the property lines have not been tied down or dimensioned through the sketch plan specifically. The interior lots appear to be 34 3,450 square feet. And the end units, so 2 of the lots appear to be about 10,350. In the memo, we included a table of the required dimensions, and we feel that those do meet the intent of the dimension standards for the units and for the underlying zone district. As we move forward through the process, the design guidelines, so the residential design standards in section 664 and 665 need to be met. So those haven't necessarily been reviewed at this time, but will through subsequent applications. Parking, access, and roadways. Access for all of the properties, the proposed lots are from, actually are being proposed to be from the alley to the east of the property, east of the development. And that just begs a little bit of a question that the existing alley is 16 feet wide and the code requires 20 feet wide. Since we're going to be going through a subdivision process through this as well, we'll have those discussions with the applicant on whether or not the extra 4 feet needs to be dedicated, if it meets standards and whatnot. So that is one element that may change the lot sizes, individual lot sizes, and reduce them if additional property is dedicated for the alley width. Off-street parking is again provided. They're required 37. They're providing 37 spaces, and based on calculations, it looks like they're required to have 20. So all of that is going to be being proposed off of the alley through either covered parking or uncovered parking through in various locations on properties. As I mentioned, the roadway improvements, there are on all 4 sides of this property, there are currently no improved roads. And so we would need to identify those cross sections, and the applicant, the development would be responsible for improving Otto, Frederick, Laura, and the alley as part of this development. As probably most of you are aware, Laura Street poses a little bit more of a nuance where there's only half-width right-of-way. The applicant is attempting to get additional right-of-way from the adjacent property owner there. But we've also discussed some potential interim solutions of allowing either one-way or reduced cross-section, development of just half of it, something along those lines that we would hash through as we get through the design and site planning, or not the site planning, sorry, the design and construction documents through the preliminary plat process. Similarly, the utilities in the area, there are no existing utilities would need to be extended for both the water and sewer mains to be able to access this, serve these properties. The sketch plan does include some conceptual alignments that have been looked at and I reviewed conceptually. There are some questions about whether or not the sewer lines are deep enough to be able to serve it. However, the town engineer has determined that there's ability to serve, it's just the alignment and the design when we get to that point of the profiles, whether or not there's enough depth in the sewer lines and whatnot. So it can be served. The alignment of the utility lines may change between the sketch plan as proposed that you're looking at this evening and the preliminary plat, but those will be based on the engineer's design and the ability to fit into the existing depths of the infrastructure. So we have also kind of the last couple pages there, we provided some of the comments that staff has made through the review. of this document. Feel that in general it is adequate. Few comments or some of the comments that we need to work through the next phases, but for the time being and for this request, we do feel that it meets the intent and the requirements, and therefore we're recommending that the Planning Commission approve the sketch plan with all of the discussion this evening, with the comments and recommendations of the staff report. I guess with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know the applicant has a pretty detailed presentation for this evening too. So with that, I'll turn it over, and Chair, if you have any questions, the commissioners have any questions of me.
Thank you, TJ. Would the applicant like to add anything to that presentation?
I have some slides to share.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would you state your name and address?
Definitely. My name is David Bruce. I live at 109 East Gregory Ave, Telluride, Colorado. I'm employed by the Telluride Foundation. So working on this project to bring workforce housing to a number of communities in the area, Ridgway, as well as Norwood, Nucla, and Uray. So I just wanted to thank TJ for that introduction, for working through the review, Preston, but also all of you for coming to that town council meeting the other day where we got to formally discuss and review this sketch plan proposal. Ultimately, I think a lot of the crux of this conversation comes down to putting 14 dwelling units on this 1 acre parcel. And I took all your comments in our informal review to heart and went back and tried to rework all those comments into the sketch plan that I am proposing tonight. And ultimately, I think this plan with 14 units is a better outcome in terms of the ambition of the project to build housing for the workforce. There's a greater diversity of building type. There's different character of units, which helps us establish that pricing tier between 60 to 120% AMI. And we've also been able to incorporate some of the concerns or questions that were brought up earlier about massing, but also off-street parking. And I think due to the ambitions of building affordable housing in the community, the ambitions to blend this proposal into the context of lot coverage and building character on the streetscape, as well as being in this site that is sort of in a crossroads between a residential district and an industrial district, it could be an appropriate place to push the density a little bit. So essentially, I'm just iterating that through these slides. So just to underline the key point, which I know you all have heard many times at this point, this project is a program from the Telluride Foundation, looked at how to build workforce housing in this community and all these surrounding communities. So our target is to be able to sell homes that are priced between 60 and 120% AMI. And based off our calculated mortgage rates, those are home sale prices that go from $252,000 to $450,000. Next slide. And we're doing that by attacking the cost of building housing. We have this swath of land, this parcel's been donated towards the project. We're taking out low interest loans from other foundations across the state, as well as loans from the state itself. And then we're trying to mitigate all the impacts of material costs and labor costs that we're seeing in the Western Slope by looking at a prefabricated method of construction. Next slide. And so here's the subject parcel that you're all familiar with. So about a month ago, maybe 5 weeks at this point, I came to you and we informally had a conversation about these 2 different proposals, a suite of 6 and a higher density proposal with 16 units. And heard absolutely the concerns about putting this large mass on the south side of the lot, but also the limited parking for those 5-plex units. The other proposal, option A, which fits the density requirements, in a way as we worked through this, we felt lacked a sort of variety and character and diversity of building types. And that was counter to this ambition to create that affordable housing window between 60 and 100% AMI. How do you price a similar unit to someone paying $250,000 and someone paying $450,000? So trying to think about the mass, but also off-street parking, went back and just tried to find a middle ground between the two, which is the sketch plan that we're proposing today. Next slide, please. Which is 2 fourplexes on the north and south of the site, with duplexes running up the middle. In the back, there's covered parking, and all units have at least 2 spots of off-street parking. For example, if I were to live on this unit here, there'd be 1 bay of covered parking and also a place to park if you had your kayaks and rafts in the covered space itself. All units, and just one quick correction to the way it was presented by TJ, we're actually going to propose subdividing this into 14 units, and all 14 sold to homeowners. So in the town comments, it says that we're going to subdivide it into 8 lots. I just want to make an asterisk that it's actually 14. All parking would be accessed through the alley, and each unit also has some enclosed private backyard space. We think it's really important for this development to have front porches facing the street. And so that's what you see with these lighter gray areas, trying to create a sort of lively streetscape. Next slide. And just to clarify that, we're not trying to actually build fourplexes or duplexes. These are all townhomes. So we hope to subdivide and actually split the property through those partition walls. So unit 11 and unit 11's parking would be sold as 1 unit. Next slide. And in a way, this really helps accomplish our goal of pricing these. So for example, a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath in the middle of that fourplex would be sold at 60% AMI. And then this larger wing of the duplex with a 2-bay garage would be hitting that higher price tier around $450,000. So I think this proposal, as opposed to the repetition of the 6 duplexes, really accomplishes this, which is a key tenet of our project. Next slide, please. There are a few diagrams that I put together in the sketch plan just to try to illustrate how this proposal fits into the larger historical residential fabric. So this is sort of just a figure ground massing study of all the surrounding blocks, 20, 29, 32, 31, and how our proposal in orange compares to the lot coverage of these blocks. So it's at the high end, but I think not an exaggeration of what is found in the surrounding area. Next slide, please. And then I took that same idea and just tried to show you how we tried to design the units themselves and think about what exists already on Laura Street. So the duplex being not too dissimilar from a single-story home with a garage in back, quite a similar massing, and so that's why we arrived at this. And then with the fourplex on the next page, somewhat in line with what you see to the east on that northeast corner of Otto and Cora. Next slide. And you guys have seen these all before. Nothing's changed from when we first presented to town council. But as we hopefully move forward with the sketch plan and into the PUD process, we're really going to work hard to design a very and dynamic streetscape, potentially having some sort of vibrant color scheme of the homes. That has been a request from the entity that donated the land to this project. Front porches are a key part, xeriscape landscaping. We know in the Mountain West, water usage is a real concern. We want to wire these for electric vehicles and photovoltaics. It's an option for the future homeowner if they want to put panels above their roofscape, or at one point have a charging station for their car. as a result of the DOLA, Department of Local Affairs money that we're using, 2 of these units will be ADA compliant, and we hope to make these all electric. Really trying to think about the future of the energy mix in Colorado. But most importantly, a place for the workforce to buy and own homes in Ridgway. The last point I want to make, and I think this is why a 14-unit proposal could be well suited to this particular site, is because we're sort of in this crossroads, a corner of Ridgway, next to an industrial site, next to a private ranch. And it also reflects through in the zoning. And then on the next page, I think it also reflects through with the future land use plan, where the future comprehensive plan, where in mixed neighborhoods, I believe it's 12 to 18 units an acre. And then you have a sort of more commercial and employment district with the storage right to the north. Next slide, please. I think it's an appropriate time to hand it over to questions. These are going to be deed restricted permanently, and that is something that will get developed as we move through this PD process.
Thank you. Let's go ahead. So this is a public hearing, so I'll go ahead and open up for public comment and see if we get any additional questions that we can direct to you. Thank you. Okay, as part of the public hearing, go to the podium. You state your name and address for the record. Anybody have any comments to make?
Hi, I'm Andrew Sokolowski. I have a duplex at 844 Charles Street in Ridgway. And I'd like to say first that I totally support affordable and workforce housing. I started the Home Trust of Union County for affordable housing, so I completely support this. What I would say, and I wrote a letter tonight to be included in the notes, is just that it would be best for the community, and it would also follow along with the master plan to not over-concentrate affordable housing in parts of the town. If it would stay within the confines of what is currently allowed on those lots. So if it's only 12 units and 24 parking spaces, then I would recommend staying within those guidelines. In part because I think that having the surrounding area be single family homes, it's a little bit of an area that may not support a denser housing development. So I would just recommend that, yes, fully support this, but that you would keep in line with the single family home kind of neighborhood if the zoning of that lot is such. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
you. This is Michael McIntyre for 14 Ridgway. I'm not surprised that the Tyrone Foundation did such a good job of presenting affordable housing in Ridgway. It's a well-endowed and very creative organization. And I appreciate the comments you made that maybe it's a little denser than residential community typically sees. I think in order to achieve affordable housing, even one that intends not to make money, one that intends to lose money, they still need to do what they can to repay the debts they've got in incurring this obligation. So, as you balance with what neighbors and is customarily accepted against the needs of affordable housing, I really need affordable housing.
Thank you.
Jack Petroselli, 540 Marion Overlook in Ridgway, Colorado. I'm just here to say that I'm 100% in favor of the presentation as submitted with the extra density. And we all know we really need housing. I think we should do everything we can to these guys are gonna be paving 2 streets in an alley or maybe 3 streets in an alley. And I think the extra density helps them offset that cost. So I think we should do whatever we can to support this.
Thank you, Jack. Anybody else? Okay, I'll close public comment. Anybody got any questions?
That'd be a comment if there aren't any questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Ready?
Yeah,
I have a question too, when you have a chance.
okay.
Go ahead.
You want me to go ahead?
Yep.
Yeah, David, I know this is always a tough question, but given the history of recent jumps in real estate costs and prices in town, looking at what you're calling the targeted prices for these units. Obviously, it's hard for you to guarantee those prices, but what's your comment about the odds of you being able to hit those targets?
Yeah, is that Mayor Clark?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for the question. It's always hard to predict the future, but one of the advantages to knowing what the price could be is that we're doing this all in a prefabricated nature. And so when you put in your supply agreement to actually buy the material, you're locking in that price really early on. So we're actually going to be paying for about 95% of the cost of the vertical construction of these homes before any material comes onto site. So that gives us some level of confidence, given all the fluctuations and variety that happens. So, I think if you think of a site construction, like what is happening on Lena Street, you have your sticks coming in and then your sheathing and then the insulation and then the bricks. And so there's like all the costs are spread through the construction period, which adds to a lot of volatility. In a way, we're getting all of that already nailed together and brought onto site. And so that gives us quite a bit more certainty that we can pull this off. But I think an underlying point is the foundation's losing money on this project, and we're actually getting down to these price points, the 60 to 80% AMI price points with grants. And so I think it's a little thing like tweaking the density from 12 to 14 just helps us pay for the infrastructure and cover what we are obligated to pay back to these foundations and the state, which have put a bet on us being able to do this. So I know that's not a direct answer to your question, but I hope it adds some data points.
No, that's helpful. And I like I say, I started out by saying I understand you can't make promises, but that's helpful background. A follow-up question. You talk about there being 12 lots instead of 8, and given the layout of the units, I assume there's going to be a lot of common space. Is that correct? And there's going to have to be a homeowners association and all that? I may have missed, you may have already mentioned that, but.
Yeah, definitely. So, just on this, maybe there's no way to annotate, but imagine a ring around that fourplex, that would be a walking path that would need to be shoveled and leaves blown off of it. We're not trying to have an affordable housing development incur additional costs of a homeowners association, for example. So I think as we move forward in the PUD, it would be a worthwhile conversation to have with you all and town council and town staff of whether there's some sort of first right of refusal purchase for the town. And in exchange, there's something like a maintenance of those pathways over time. If it comes down to it and we need to do an HOA to make this development work, we will do it. But there are administrative costs, logistic costs of an HOA. But you're spot on, John, that there's definitely some shared maintenance requirements in this site plan. But hopefully ones that we can hurdle.
Okay, thank you.
I'm in favor of it as proposed. I think you did a really good job and did consider all the things that were said at the meeting. And I don't think that it's a stretch to add 2 units to this development lot. And like was said, to offset some of the infrastructure costs, like putting in 3 roads, like that's going to cost a lot of money. If they had a different location where the roads were already there, then they wouldn't be paying for that. But given this location and they're the first ones to develop in this area, they're going to be paying for the roads. And I think that the density is reasonable, and that's about all I have. I like it. I think it's good.
I will also say that I like the lack of the 5 units on the end, which really, to me, was too much math. And I think this works better. So kudos to you for taking our suggestions on that issue. And I have one question. Is there any movement on your discussions with the Wolf, with the owners of the ranch?
I'm the wrong person to really speak to that because I haven't reached out to the Wolves. I think that would be something that falls on Paul. I mean, my answer to building the full right of way, considering the property boundary right there, I think there could be a difference in timeline between resolving that and getting this done. And I think that's something that I want to highlight. What we have done is connected with, and I apologize if I'm forgetting the property owner folks to the north, and we actually have the same civil engineer. So, the silver lining is that Laura could extend further north beyond this property and just network the street system a little bit more. But I think it's something that we'll need to flush out as we move forward with this. And maybe it's setting this western edge of Laura Street as the designed halfway point. So that, in the future, it could be built out.
Are you guys planning to ask for a height variance?
No, I think everything can get below 27 feet.
Thanks. Yeah, I really love it. I'm excited, just like these guys are, about it, and I feel better about the 2 extra units and how you guys designed it, because at first I was like, I don't think we should put more, but I definitely, this is good.
So I like the design. I like the reductions you've done from the initial plan or plan B of your initial plan. The one concern I have, and I realize you're putting in a lot of pavement and infrastructure around all this. Even though your space usage is consistent or lower than some of the usage that's nearby, I have concerns with the density and the fact that there's only 2 ways out at this point, and that's via auto or Laura at the end of the day to get out to the rest of the town. I wouldn't necessarily want to put it all on you, but what would be the possibility of extending that Frederick through that other half block?
Just for frame of reference, all the total infrastructure cost is around $750,000. So we're working hard and have communicated with TJ and Preston a little bit about all this grant funding for affordable housing. So, there could be a way. I think we're also trying to get this northern connection all the way through, which would make 3 of the 4. But it's a real limitation of getting projects like this done, just building the infrastructure. So the way we've drawn this, I think, is a way to start and actually have some access, but yeah, there are limitations for sure.
If there is a way to address that, and I can't speak for the town. I would like to see something and maybe even the town help to some extent if we could, to have that other route. It's my 2 cents.
I guess the only other concern I had was the Jealous Creek is kind of close by and there is a rancher there. I don't know how close it is to Jealous Creek and how it affects that whole irrigation, but there is still a ranch there, so it gets close to the water source. And I just worry about the putting so many units next to a water source.
So are you referring to the creek that runs along the Wolf property?
Yes,
For the irrigation.
For irrigation?
Just a drain ditch.
Yeah.
it's just a drain ditch. So the actual creek, which is over by County Road 5, is
It doesn't come anywhere near that.
Right, yeah, that's Putnam Creek. So
Okay.
the drainage ditch you're referring to, the town doesn't put anything into that currently, I don't believe so, but point taken.
And nor do I think. I haven't seen water running that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, yeah.
And we haven't invested in a lot of the civil engineering yet, really waiting to get your reactions tonight before we go ahead and get them on board, but we'll do full drainage studies, make sure that this aligns with utilities. There are big gaps in the staff report related to the infrastructure proposal, which is really surfacing conventional, conceptual starting point, and that will get professionally done by Goff Civil Engineering.
Want a
So,
motion?
yeah.
TJ, could you suggest a motion so I don't misspeak to move this forward?
Sure, I'll be kind of simple with this one, because since just this one doesn't go to plan town council, so the motion would just be to approve the sketch plan as submitted, if that's the desire. And then that just allows the applicant to move forward to the preliminary plat and preliminary PUD phase of the process. So the simple motion would be to approve the sketch plan as submitted.
I
For
move
Ridgway
to,
Homes PUD.
what?
For Ridgway Homes PUD and
I
subdivision.
move to approve the sketch plan for Ridgway Homes PUD.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? We declare the poll of the commissioners.
Sure. Commissioner Emerson? It's not. Commissioner Montague?
Yes.
Lisk?
Aye.
Nelson?
I
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer?
Aye.
Mayor Clark?
Aye.
And Chairperson Kenwright?
Aye,
Thank you all very much.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, the application sketch plan, location with Lydell Statue subdivision, block 3, lot 10, address to be determined Lydell Drive, zone historic business HB, applicant Chris Hawkins, owner Revelation Investments, CO LLC. TJ.
Right, excellent. So the second item is a sketch plan again. As mentioned, the property is located off of Liddell Drive. It's lot 10 of Liddell Stanton subdivision. Lot is currently vacant with no existing improvements or structures on it. And there's currently no development on the property. One residential home borders the property to the south, and the property to the north is vacant as well. Property is zoned HB, historic business, and is accessed directly from Liddell Drive. The property is in the southeastern portion of the town with only a few other uses surrounding it off of Liddell Drive that include both residential and commercial uses. You may all recall that a similar application was submitted in mid-July and was presented to the Planning Commission. At that time, following discussion, the Planning Commission denied the sketch plan, citing the following items. Following discussion and citing floodplain concerns, concerns with the density proposed at that time, discussing on-street and off-street parking, as well as sidewalks along Liddell Street. So the applicant team went back to the drawing board and have resubmitted this application. This application or this request includes 4 attached townhome dwelling units with a total of 8 units. That's a decrease from 10 that were proposed in the previous application. So the property is about a half an acre. Therefore, the proposed density is 16 units per acre. And the master plan that calls this location mixed use business on the future land use map identifies the density as 12 to 18 units per acre. And while primary uses are retail stores, professional service offices, commercial services, and restaurants, supporting uses in this area are higher density residential uses. Similarly, we have in the staff memo provided a list of goals and policies in the master plan that should be considered in the evaluation of this application. So the current zone district is HB, as I mentioned, that allows townhome dwellings by use by right. And the district doesn't have any minimum lot size or maximum lot coverage. So in the memo, I did include a dimensional table. I did find a little bit of an error in this, that the 15-foot setback for the 3rd story. I had a conversation today with Chris, and I confirmed that that is only for the front yard setback, not the side or side street setbacks or anything like that. So when we get to the next step, we'll identify what the front is, but I want to be clear that you know, if the 15-foot setback only applies to the front yard, and as proposed, with it being one lot, the front yard would be Liddell, and it appears to meet that 15-foot setback adjacent to that. So it is only that front yard. Again, the residential design standards will be reviewed in conjunction with the preliminary plat, and we'll review section 665 and 664 at that time. So access to this property is from Liddell Street, or Liddell Drive, sorry, and a majority of that road is gravel, except for the short portion adjacent at the intersection of State Highway 62 at the apron. So part of the discussion will be improvements. I'm not sure that this necessarily brings it up, but through the preliminary plat process, we'll be talking about that. The town requires 1 parking space per each townhome. Therefore, a total of 8 off-street parking spaces is being required. And the project at this point is providing 2 tuck-under garages for each unit, providing 16 total spaces, therefore meeting that standard. In addition, the site plan does identify 4 additional potential on-street parking spaces on Liddell. Utilities are in the area and can serve this project. Again, through the design of the next phases, we'll have to go through the standards and make sure that we can get adequate service to each, but it's possible at this time. So we'll just review those as it comes up. in the next phases through the design process. So with that, staff does feel that the application does meet the requirements of the sketch plan and would recommend approval. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I believe the applicant, Chris Hawkins, is here to give a presentation as well.
Thank you, DJ. Chris.
Hi, good evening, Chris Hawkins. Without mind planning, my office address is 523 Clinton Street, Suite 4. Really appreciate you considering this again tonight, as well as TJ's analysis. As TJ said, main change we made was on the density, and the whole project did have a complete redesign since July. Here in a second. Right. Sorry. Oh, no problem. But as far as our team, I'll just go into that real quick. The architect, they're on the phone if you have any questions. Civil engineers on board, we're ready to help out. We've also got Proset is the builder, Proset Construction overall. So if you could go to that team member slide, that'd be great. S&H Consultants is the civil engineering, Bruce McIntyre is the owner's agent. And then we've got the degree with Martin Law Firm. As far as the site, I think you're all familiar with it. I did want to point out this is a more recent survey. We provided a survey of the plans that shows the trees, but this shows the location of what is a gravel driveway in Liddell Drive in the right of way. And the reason I'm pointing that out is when we get to the site plan, you can look at the relationship of this driveway to the site. So next slide, please. One of the major issues at the last meeting was floodplain. And we just really wanted to note this in the VOD. This is a letter of map provision that was done in 2015. And lot 10 is located completely outside the floodplain. We will get updated information if FEMA has any and see if that mapping changes this, but it clearly swings around the back of the property and comes down the creek. And this letter of map provision was actually done for the single family home down here. As far as the design of the site itself, there are 2 parking spaces in each garage for 2 times as much parking is required, and we are proposing some limited parking along the Liddell, just like elsewhere in the town. We're certainly open to that in that conversation overall. We are providing a big area of open space on this side of the site. And I did want to reiterate, this is in the historic business zone district, which allows for high density development. And we think this is one of those supported residential uses. So there would be a reconfiguration of the drive more into a right-of-way type function that then would transition into down to a driveway with a single home. Next slide, please. This just shows some of the architectural intent from your design. This obviously has to get refined before it comes back to meet the architectural design standards. But again, just looking at high quality townhome development. As far as the planning commission concerns, floodplain, I talked about this a little bit. We will go ahead and show Cottonwood Creek under a revised survey and show the floodplain boundary on there. We'll actually have it surveyed so you can see as much as we can translate between the FEMA map and the survey. As far as density, we do meet the master plan recommended density now. That was another major concern back in July. Next slide. As far as parking, we're providing twice as much as required, along with additional guest parking in the Liddell. And then as far as sidewalks, we're open to providing a sidewalk. Right now, there's no sidewalks along the Liddell. So if we'll enter into an agreement and provide it if needed in the future and give room for it there, but right now it's just nothing has been required to provide it, including Halfway Bank. So we really don't want to construct sidewalks nowhere. That's a little bit of a waste of resources, but certainly can do that if there's a bigger push for it. And also, too, Liddell's low traffic volume supports pedestrian walking, as is pretty common in the town with people walking down busy streets. So, really want to keep this sweet to the main points. We're glad to answer any questions. Our whole team is participating in the Zoom meeting. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, this is a public hearing, so we'll now open it up to public comment. Once again, Come to the podium, state your name and give me your address.
My name is Allison White. I live at 301. This is our name. I'm good with the project, except for the parking on the street. I think it's going to be a bit much. Our driveway, their driveway parallel to ours. I don't understand how they're going to do parking and having people come in and out of that driveway. Not to mention it's not going to look very good, but you know, those people have to look at on their own cars, but I guess that's.
Anybody else?
Yes, I'm Gary Dick, I'm Allison's husband, live at 301 Medill. The only thing I would say is, well, two things. First off, my remarks about the floodplain at the last meeting in July were definitely taken out of context, and I agree that they're not in the floodplain as such. Secondly, as far as the driveway goes, we want to be included in that discussion. That's our access. I don't want to see this happen in a vacuum. We've invested money in where the driveway is. The previous owner had us relocate the entry. So how the town is planning to proceed going forwards, we want to be on the record as wanting to be involved in that conversation. I want to be blindsided by bulldozers taking out a bunch of money that we spent. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll close public comment. TJ, I got a question. The previous meeting discussion, there was a discussion like plat note that prohibited parking. Is that, have you been able to confirm that?
I have not. You mean if the plat note limits on-street parking?
Yes.
No, we have not confirmed or denied that. Or, you know, we
I
haven't
seem
been
to remember that there was something like that on the plat.
Yeah, that would be, oh,
We can look into it, sorry.
Okay. I mean, the reality is that the parking that's on site meets the requirement. So just since there is a concern, if there already is a plat note, we ought to confirm that.
yeah, I mean, the commission can move forward as you desire, but we can move that with the plat, the subdivision would amend the, be an amendment to the other plat. So we would confirm that through the next phases.
Okay.
And then, as you mentioned, they're providing adequate off-street parking per the code. So.
I have a question. I know that it's in the notes, but could you reiterate the size of this lot and what the allowable number of units would be in the master plan? Was it a half acre?
Sure. The property is 0.504 acres, and they're providing 8 units. So that would be a density of 16 units per acre, right? Doubling it because it's half. And the mixed use business classification of the future land use map allows 12 to 18 dwelling units per acre.
Okay, and then I have a question for the applicant. Back to the parking thing. I realized that you've done 2 underneath parking spots. Would people be allowed to park outside in front of their units? outside of the underneath parking spots?
I think where it wasn't going out to a driveway, yes. If it was where it was going out to the driveway, the answer should probably be no.
Right, it looks like some of the units would have at least one available and one, I don't know if sideways would be optional. But that would be, as long as it wasn't not allowed, that would be additional parking that's not even on here.
Correct, thank you.
Yeah, and just toward that point, I know you have kind of a flowing way of getting into and out of the units that are on the periphery. But if you did a modified hammerhead or just squared that off, people could back directly out of their garage and go forward rather than having to, as it's designed now, back out into the main thing.
It's a good.
A small thing. And then just one comment, first a question and possibly a comment on the box-like structure or of the sketch versus the photographs of quite shall we say roof-heavy designs versus the sketch, which has no roof projected. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the code requires some projection over, and that may not be in historic business. But I thought I don't know, maybe TJ, you could help me with this. I thought there needed to be at least a 12-inch projection. Do you know?
Well, what's being shown, as Chris indicated, this is just a very, very conceptual sketch. In reality, what we could be looking at is a flat roof with a parapet. So you wouldn't have any protection.
Except on that. Well, gotcha.
Yeah.
Understood. Okay.
I have another question. I don't know how far we get into the layout, and I'm guessing it would be cost prohibitive, but I'm looking at this and thinking if we split those front two units on either side of the entryway, would that open things up for more movement and parking? I don't know if that's going too far on design questions.
We purposely clustered the units on the northern and western side of the drive to provide a large area of open space towards the neighbors to the south and towards the river corridor, just in response. But if we're open to those sort of comments, I think in general, we can come back with a design that shows a little bit more parking on site, even though it's not required. And I think that access way, we can modify look at the hammerhead type designs a little better.
Mayor Clark has a question.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, thank you. Chris, a couple questions. In your drawing A010, the one with the actual purple plan views of the units, there's light gray area of apron right up against the unit and then dark gray main part of the driveway. Are any of those planned to be paved?
Yes, the driveway is planned to be paved, and there probably be concrete drainage roads where needed, and then there's sidewalks in between the units as well too.
So am I right that the light gray is concrete and the dark gray is paving?
Yeah, Casey, can you answer that question for the mayor, please?
Sure. So, this is just in the preliminary stages of civil engineering. So,
Understood.
There was really no thought put into that other than, the dark gray portion would be more like a private road, and maybe don't take my words literally, but the lighter gray would act more like a driveway would, and the darker gray would act more like internal site circulation. But it would all be intended to be concrete, and
Okay.
concrete or asphalt, whatever the civil engineer and the the city decides. But it would all be paved.
All right, awesome, thanks. And then the other question, Chris, in your very end of your comments, you were saying that you thought that the low traffic nature of this subdivision made sense to have pedestrians walking in the street. Well, you're about to add a lot of traffic to this subdivision on the end of Liddell Drive. So I think that's a kind of a contradictory statement. Now, I understand that there's no other sidewalks in the subdivision, but I would certainly want, in the end, for this project to have a plat note or whatever it is that requires the development to participate in sidewalk construction when it makes sense for the rest of the subdivision to do so as well.
Absolutely, and we can incorporate that as well into the homeowners association document so they can find it in two places during due diligence.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, John. Good questions.
I have a question. Is there any business use or is this all residential?
It's all residential. We felt down here at this portion, it was more suited to be all residential, transition to the single family area. Last year when the plan was adopted, or not last year, when the plan was adopted and when the code changes came in, there used to be a requirement to provide commercial and historic business. That was lifted, I think, to allow for flexibility on where you're located at. If this was in the town core or further to the north on the Dow, probably commercial makes sense, but out here, we felt it was more appropriate just to have all residential uses.
Okay, I'm just looking at the characteristics listed here. The master plan goals. It says mixed use business areas intended to support a range of commercial uses to serve residents and tourists. More auto oriented, so should consider those pedestrians and bicycles on sidewalks. And high density residential uses are encouraged either above ground floor commercial uses or in standalone buildings. So it appears that we're not meeting those characteristics.
Yeah, I think the plan allows for both. I think it's really, you could certainly push for it if you wanted. But in this context, we felt it was more appropriate to have all residential out here in this location, just given its distance out here overall. And there is that whole thing about supporting high density residential uses. But in the end, commercial at this location certainly would change its characteristics and parking requirements. But we felt this was more appropriate, especially since the prior owner had made certain comments about just doing lower density development. We're just trying to honor the context of the neighborhood more than anything.
If I could follow up on Russ's question, I was looking at this and thinking this would be an ideal place to market these units as live work for artists in a way that we weren't able to do with the Space to Create project. So in other words, have these units be specifically marketed as being possible to have a ceramic studio in the garage basement or whatever, an artist studio. I think that would really fit with both the sort of the tenor of what the town's trying to do and also meet somewhat what Russ was talking about in the master plan goals. So I'd encourage you guys to consider that.
Okay. Good point.
I have a couple things to say, and I have a question too as well. Well, we had kind of I talked about the looping requirements last time because you were talking about doing a dead end. And I personally would like to see looping requirements attached to this project just because it affects the quality of the water. And what happens when you do the dead end is all the sediments go there and they settle. And what the town would have to do is flush those sediments out. So I I just highly recommend a looping system for your project. And then the second thing we didn't even discuss last time, this is something that I was just noticing and had questions about. So the landscaping, I noticed there's a lot of trees right now on the lot. And I was wondering if you guys were gonna save any of those or try to save the habitat, or is all of it getting?
Most of the cottonwood trees will be removed. We're gonna try to save some of those on the northeast side where it's that open area and maybe in between. But cottonwood trees are everywhere in the town and they're everywhere. So we do, and TJ's point, we do have to revise the landscaping regulations that were recently adopted. So we will do that, and we will see if we can save some of those cottonwood trees as an amenity, because that's efficient for the development if we can save those.
Motion. Let's go.
I move to approve the sketch plan for
Iron Rail Townhomes subdivision.
Iron Rail Townhome subdivision.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Would you clerk please hold the commissioners?
Who was the second one? Bill.
Bill.
Sorry to interrupt. Because it's a sketch plan, do we have to worry about adding the findings or mentioning the staff findings?
I don't think so.
Those are all requirements.
Okay.
Second call. Commissioner Montague,
Aye.
Lisk,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer,
Aye.
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
Chairperson Canright.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's nice seeing you in person again. So thank you.
Move to approve.
I second.
Motion have second.
Okay, Commissioner Montague,
Aye.
Lisk,
Aye.
Nelson.
Oh, I abstained with the here.
See?
I'll just try that. Mayor Pro Tem Meyer,
Aye.
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
Chairperson Canright.
Aye. Before we adjourn, I want to say, it's nice having the clock back.
Yeah. Yes.
You want your time
Telling the
ticking
right time.
away?
Yeah, telling the right time.
Do you need a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
I move to adjourn the meeting at
Yes.
Aye.
6:42.
Hey.
And 20 seconds.
Yes.
Wow,
Yeah, I like that.
that's not bad for the huge packet.
Hey, thank you, John. Have fun.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Take
John.
care. Good night.
Good night.
I have a
Thanks,
question.
TJ.
Thanks, TJ.
Oh, John,
Do we have?
Sandy wants to know when the new laptop's coming out.
I can't second it.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Sandy wants to know when is Apple gonna have a new laptop out?
Oh, probably next month, like November is what the
Okay.
rumor mill says.
Okay.
Before
Thank you.
John gets off. We kind of screwed up.
What?
I second the minutes.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
We can.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
We're already adjourned.
Yeah.
Good night.
I wrestled.
Okay, bye.